So, guys, let's look at reasons why marriages fail. I've made a list, you know, um, but I'll go through it, in no particular order. Why do marriages fail? There's an epidemic of marital failure, which we call divorce. There's another form of marital failure, which is separation, legal separation, where a couple, a man and a woman usually, are not um, are not legally divorced, but they are separated, they're not living together, and they're not in good terms. There's no harmony. And they understand that there's no intimacy, they no longer share marital duties. They might be co-parenting, but there's no intimacy in terms of their marriage. That's another form of marital failure. Now, the question is, why do marriages actually fail? What are those things that lead people that were once supposedly loved to begin to drift apart? One is clash of egos. So two people coming together, every individual has pride, has ego. Now, when the ego of both parties involved begin to clash, where you see people say, "Oh, this person is rubbing shoulder with me. My wife is rubbing shoulder with me. My husband is stubborn. My husband doesn't listen to me. My wife wants to, prove that, she doesn't want to submit to me. She argues all the time. I tell her to do something, and she just blocks it off and does whatever she wants." So, clash of ego. That clash of ego is the number one reason why marriages fail. Usually, that clash of ego is usually the beginning of the failure, because failure is the process. Marriages or relationships don't just wake up one day and fail. There's a beginning, there's an intermediary process or stage, and then there's the end where the marriage eventually comes to a halt. So the beginning is usually the clash of egos, where people feel they want to prove a point, and oh, my partner wants to prove a point. I want to resist the points they're trying to prove. So that's usually at the beginning phase, and usually persists that clash of ego. Another thing that usually causes marital failure is fundamental incompatibility between the people who are married. Compatibility cannot always be determined during the premarital phase, the dating stage, but you can have a clue. And there are four levels or sometimes five levels of compatibility. There is spiritual compatibility, there's sexual compatibility, there's a psychological compatibility, or emotional compatibility, and there's an intellectual level of compatibility. Okay. Now, if one or more these levels of compatibility is or are lacking, usually is a fundamental problem in that relationship. If you and your partner cannot, if you and your partner, if there are 10 decisions and 7 out of 10 times you and your partner disagree, there's a problem. It's normal to have disagreements in your relationship, but out of 10 times, that disagreement should be 3 or less, 1, 2, 3 times. If you're having disagreements 5 or more out of 10 times, there's a fundamental problem of compatibility in that relationship. And both of you should actually ask yourselves what you are doing together. Because if you get married, there's a likelihood that things will get worse if the fundamentals of foundation is already shaky. Another thing that could lead to marital failure is family influence. What do I mean? We're all influenced by people that we come across, things we watch on social media, the friends we keep, acquaintances, work colleagues, and most importantly, family members. Our shared experiences with our siblings and parents, our shared ideologies towards things, about life, relationship, marriage, and other things, how we handle conflict. And, a lot of those dynamics, how we relate, how we draw influences and ideas and suggestions from family members and friends play a very large role towards marital failure. Of course, infidelity. Infidelity is usually not the beginning. Remember, I said marital failure, as well as most failures. I'm a doctor, so we'll talk organ failure. A lot of the organs don't just fail. It's a beginning process, there's an intermediary process, and there's an end process, an end point where you have complete failure. Now, in marital failure or relationship failure, infidelity is usually not the beginning. Infidelity is usually a consequence of more foundational failures like intimacy problems, clash of ego. Infidelity now comes in when people begin to resent their partner and they no longer feel that motivation and they no longer see the need to remain faithful to their marital vows. That's where infidelity usually comes in the middle, in the intermediary process or intermediate process of that marital failure. Financial problems is another big problem, depending on the dynamics of that marriage, depending on who earns more or who is the breadwinner, or are they co-breadwinners, what ratio of financial contribution. There's some marriages where finance is not a problem. One person is usually the man is super rich, the woman might be a homemaker, her primary responsibility might be domestic chores, school run and things. She's also working, but probably a lower income earner, and the family, she's satisfied with her income. You know what I mean? She's not trying to uh, prove a point that she can earn as much as the man, does. Because usually that's where ego comes in, clash of egos. So financial problem can be a major issue. Many men will feel like they have ego and they might become insecure when their wives or begin to earn, or when their wives become financially independent. What does that mean? The woman no longer needs you. The woman can pay her bills, she can foot her rent, she can pay her council tax, she can fund her vacation for herself and the children. She no longer needs you financially. You know what I mean? Many men will feel like that's the point where a lot of men will begin to become observant of the woman's behavior. Is she loyal to me, or is she now independent both financially and otherwise? Or she now feel that because she can foot all her bills, my opinions no longer matter. And so you see a lot of men become edgy, and they begin to react in funny ways out of that lack of confidence that they may be experiencing. And another thing is a lot of women, I'm not trying to sound misogynistic, but this is an observation. A lot of women, when they become financially independent, will usually no longer need a man. Is a reality, is a fact. You can observe around you. You might have observed this in people's relationships. When many women are able to foot their bills 100% without the assistance of the man in their life, a lot of the time, the dynamic of the relationship, the way they relate begins to change. A woman that used to be more loving, more, leaning towards the man becomes independent. She backs down. She feels, you know what? Yeah, if he talks anyhow, just book a holiday, pick up my bags, pick the kids, and off I go. You know what I mean? So the mentality changes, and that usually is a major problem that leads to marital failure. Lack of intimacy. Lack of intimacy can be strongly linked to the sexual incompatibility. And in fact, when I was mentioning the levels of compatibility, there's one I missed: physical compatibility, which is attraction. How attracted are you when you see your partner? Do you get aroused? You know what I mean? Or even if you're not sexually aroused, you look at them and be like, my man is very handsome, my woman is very beautiful. Do you feel excited just looking at them? That's physical compatibility or attraction. And sexual compatibility, that's where lack of intimacy begins to set in. If you don't find your partner sexually attractive or physically attractive, over time, lack of intimacy might set in. Poor communication is usually intertwined with most of these other things I've said. When there's a clash of egos, when there's incompatibility, intellectual incompatibility, religious, you don't share similar beliefs. Maybe one person believes in praying the rosary, the other person believes that praying the rosary is idolatry. There's already a fundamental and foundational problem of religious and spiritual compatibility. They don't believe in the same thing. And before you know what's happening, their spiritual levels will begin to dip because they're no longer praying together because they have different foundational beliefs as regards prayer. One person believes, oh yeah, bowing before the grotto of maybe the Blessed Virgin Mary is idolatry, and that person believes it's not idolatry. And they already begin to have spiritual conflicts, friction in their spiritual beliefs. So poor communication is usually a consequence of most of these other problems, foundational problems. Burnout. Burnout is a big topic. Burnout is a diagnosis. A lot of organizations, workplaces try to belittle burnout. They try to make it not sound like a diagnosis. They try to make it look like people are weak, but people are not weak. People are burnt out. Burnout is a consequence of sustained high levels of stress, usually at the workplace. People are rushing. There's no time to sit down and drink water. You're just constantly working, 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 working. Just a matter of time, over a few months to a few years, you're going to break down mentally and even physically. That's burnout. Now, as human beings, it's very difficult to completely delineate our work life from our family life. A lot of people would transfer that stress and burnout from work into their homes. And usually that also contributes to marital failure. So in a nutshell, I've just gone through a couple of things that I believe strongly contribute to marital failure. Let me know what you think about these opinions or points I've made. If you disagree partly, totally, if you completely disagree, let me know what your opinion is on factors that lead to marital failure. Thank you.